Seattle answered one question. Tokyo is asking a different one. The original coffee talk was about presence, showing up, sitting with people long enough to hear what they were actually saying. Episode 2 was about consequence. What happens when you listened, and what happens when you didn't? Tokyo is about something older. What do you do with the part of yourself that isn't finished? Same composer, same late night hour. Entirely new answer. The Coffee Talk series is not technically about coffee. It is about the conversations that happen when you put the right drink in front of someone at the right moment. It is about elves and werewolves and vampires and mermaids sitting at the same counter because the outside world has no room for them after midnight. It is about the barista, you, saying nothing mostly, just listening, just serving. The first game established the world. Seattle, late night, urban fantasy wrapped in lo-fi beats and pixel art. The problems were human problems. Career collapse, creative stagnation, the specific grief of loving someone who doesn't love you the same way back. The creatures were fantastical. The hurt was not. Episode 2. Hibiscus and Butterfly tightened the screws. The same structure, but with consequence. Choices carried further. Loss was more specific. The resolution wasn't clean, because the kind of stories the series tells don't resolve cleanly. Tokyo is the third version of this question. Same lo-fi beats, same late night hour, same composer, Andrew A.J. Jeremy, who has scored all three, but a different city, different mythology, and 3 new characters who are carrying something the Seattle games never quite named directly. Seattle made sense as a setting because Seattle is the home of coffee culture in the Western world. The choice was almost too obvious. Of course, the coffee game is set in Seattle. Tokyo is a harder answer, and that's why it's the right one. Tokyo is a city where old and new exist on the same block. A 1,000-year-old shrine next to a convenience store. Traditional clothing on the same train as neon advertisements. The mythology didn't leave when modernity arrived. It adapted. It stayed. That's not atmosphere. That's the theme of the game. The original Coffee Talk used Western urban fantasy. Vampires, werewolves, the kind of creatures borrowed from European folklore and placed into a modern American city. Tokyo gives the series something it didn't have before, yōkai. And yōkai are different from werewolves. A werewolf is a human who transforms under pressure. A yōkai is something that exists in between alive and dead, between the natural world and the world of spirits, between what was and what is. They don't fit cleanly into either category. That is not an accident. The series has always been about the people who don't fit. Tokyo just found a mythology that was already built around that idea. 3 characters are at the center of Coffee Talk Tokyo, and each of them is, in a different way, stuck. Kenji is a kappa, a traditional water creature from Japanese folklore, and a retired salaryman. He spent his entire life inside an identity that no longer exists. The company, the role, the daily structure. Retirement didn't free him, it erased him. That is not a supernatural problem. That is the most human problem in the game. Vin is the barista's assistant, non-binary, carrying the weight of a fractured past and the lingering consequences of something that went wrong before the game begins. What that disaster was, the game reveals over time. But the important part is this: Vin is still here, still showing up, still serving coffee. The consequences haven't finished arriving, and Vin hasn't left. And then there's Ayame. Ayame is recently deceased. She died, and she's still in the world, still walking into the cafe at night, still visible to some people and only audible to others. She is not at rest because she has unfinished business. The mechanics of what that business is unfold over the course of the game. Not everyone can see her. can. The game doesn't immediately explain why. In Coffee Talk 1, the barista was a witness, neutral, present, observing. In Tokyo, the barista can see the dead. That's not a gameplay feature, that's a role. The cafe is no longer just a refuge for the living. The Coffee Talk series has always used its supernatural elements to talk about very specific human feelings. The werewolf who can't control himself is about men who were never taught to. The mermaid far from the sea is about displacement, about being somewhere your body wasn't built for. Tokyo continues that tradition and then goes one step further. Ayame can't leave because she isn't finished. Kenji can't move forward because the version of himself he understood doesn't exist anymore. Vin can't outrun the past because the consequences of it keep arriving. These aren't three separate stories. These are three versions of the same condition. Unfinished. The cafe in Tokyo is not just a late-night refuge. It is a waiting room, a place where people who haven't completed something come to sit, order a drink, and be seen by the one person behind the counter who is, for reasons the game will eventually explain, able to see all of them. The move from Seattle to Tokyo isn't a reboot. It's the series asking what it was always about from a different angle. In Seattle, the cafe was a place where the lost could be found. In Tokyo, it's a place where the unfinished can finally finish. This is the part where I tell you whether it works. Based on the demo, it does. The same composer, the same pixel art warmth, the same quiet pacing that asks you to slow down and actually read what's in front of you. The characters are distinct in the way the original characters were distinct. Their problems are specific enough to feel real, even when the characters themselves are not. The question Coffee Talk Tokyo is asking is harder than the questions that came before it. Seattle asked, what does it feel like to be heard? Tokyo asks, what does it take to actually be done? I don't know the answer yet. Neither does Ayame. But the cafe is open, and I'll be there. Subscribe. There's more in this world than the credits will tell you.